Remember the bridge collapse in Baltimore a few years ago, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And typically in the past, when an event like that happened, emergency responders, state, local employees would spend weeks, if not months, trying to recreate what happened and what is the situation on the ground. With AI now, they had an operational model of the bridge within a day using video feeds, using satellite information, and they were able to stitch it all together. And the only reason they could do that was the speed and the application of AI to a geospatial system.
Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I am curious about AI. And today I am curious about the half of AI that nobody is talking about. Think about where the AI conversation lives right now. Chatbots, agents, copilots, coding, cleaning up your email. All of it is mostly like text and software and weightless. As my guest puts it, AI has a blind spot. It assumes the world is abstract, that everything floats free of the actual ground it sits on. But in the real world, on planet Earth, a pipeline running through a river valley behaves nothing like the same pipeline over Rocky Mountain terrain. Physics matter. There's different soil, different risk. The where changes everything. My guest today is John Lenahan, who leads Esri's global commercial services team. Now, Esri is a company that's been quietly digitizing the planet since 1969. The maps behind everything from the Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard to the pipes under your streets. 95% of national governments run on it, so does half the Fortune 500. And here's why this grabs me in many ways. A few years ago, I wrote a book for the Explorers Club, the legendary Explorers Club, home of members like Neil Armstrong, Jane Goodall, Teddy Roosevelt, right? And one of the book's threads, is how over the course of the last 120 years, explorers were filling the edges of the map, right? Like back in the early 1900s, trying to find the North Pole, trying to find the South Pole. John Glenn at an Explorers Club annual dinner once called it that they're trying to push back the dragons off the edge of a map, right? Old-timey maps had things on the edge saying, there be dragons here. And the explorer's job was to push back the dragons, to expand the edge of the maps. And after a while, of course, it felt like the map was done. We did it, everyone. The maps were finished. They kind of were, but kind of weren't. Right? There are other kinds of maps of the world, of maps of risk, maps of soil, maps of cities near misses that we're only still beginning to draw. And these are the maps Esri is helping us fill. We get into all of that. The manufacturer who never realized that 65% of its suppliers sat in one corner of Southeast Asia, exposed to the exact same shock until spatial AI put them on a map, right? These are insights you can have for business. Or the Baltimore bridge that collapsed and how responders built a working model of the wreckage in a day instead of months. Or a pipeline operator with 140,000 miles of pipe and $1 billion maintenance bill asking AI not just where the money goes, but why. And then the harder question underneath all of this, how do you keep a human in a loop when the map is deciding a bus route and real lives are on it? So I think it's a very refreshing, different perspective on AI, also showing that the AI world is far more robust than kind of just what the open AIs, Anthropics are cranking out in models. A good reminder of the physical world. We still have a lot to learn, and there's still a lot of value to be extracted by better understanding our world and these impact real decisions. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with John Lenahan of Esri. John, welcome to AI Curious.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm really looking forward to it.
So I'm going to throw you a curveball right off the bat. And listeners, to peel back the curtain, just moments before recording, John said, okay, don't worry, Jeff. I'm going to make sure I avoid using the acronym GIS. And I'm like, no. It's okay. It's fair game. Part of the episode, part of the conversation is why GIS matters. So let's go there immediately out of the jump. For listeners who have never heard of GIS, who are desperate for one more acronym in their life. What is GIS and why does it matter?
Okay. What GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, which is a mouthful, but short form GIS, it's kind of affectionately known as GIS across the industry. And what it is really a technology and an information system. Like think of what you use on your computer every day for, word processing, but its focus is bringing in layers of information. Think of demographic information about people, spending habits. It brings in information about weather events, weather patterns, infrastructure data. So the pipes under your street, water pipes, sewer pipes, different kinds of sensors, camera data, traffic data. And it brings all of that together into a mapping system, and it allows a user to analyze it and understand patterns. So a good way I like to think about it, everyone can think back to the COVID-19 map from Johns Hopkins University, right?
Yeah.
And that's GIS. They used our technology to build the COVID-19 map. And what it did is it answered the most basic question. Is it safe to go here or go to a certain place, a certain location?
And I like to think of it as kind of maps, and let me know if this is wildly reductive, like maps on steroids, right? Maps on every kind of dimension you could imagine. And I have a personal connection to this a little bit, John, that you might not know, but Esri has been on my radar for a while in that I wrote a book for the Explorers Club that's largely in many ways about how explorers have been thinking about maps over the decades and centuries, and how even though much of the world is obviously like the obvious maps are kind of drawn, right? We solved that problem when we got to the North and South Pole, a century plus ago, but there's still so much of the world that we need to understand more deeply. And so GIS, other kind of maps help with that. And listeners, I promise we'll get to the AI of all this in a bit, but I think this is useful context setting. And for those who are not yet familiar with Esri, give a quick kind of bio of the company's been around for half a century, is arguably the largest GIS company and project, kind of basically a map of the world. Say a little more about what Esri is all about.
Yeah, we've been around since 1969, essentially digitizing the world. So like you said, we've had these maps, but we've helped organizations and governments and folks around the world bring all of those maps into a digital world, right? Into the computer system, into the information system. And then we've essentially established and really firmed up kind of what does it mean to do GIS around the world across organizations? So 95% of the largest national governments use our technology. 50% of the Fortune 500 companies use our technology to solve certain problems in a spatial or a location context. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we're really excited about, like you said, Jeff, what does AI mean on top of GIS or a geospatial platform? How can AI enhance that experience and even do more with it?
Yeah, and I kind of give us a roadmap to listeners of where it's ultimately going. What I think is so interesting is that there's many in the AI space right now who are thinking that, a lot of the energy has been focused in the AI world, broadly speaking, has been focused on text-based large language models, or sometimes image-based and videos and so on. But maybe we really need to have a world model, a model that is a better reflective of not just words, but also the physical world itself, right? And so I feel like what you guys have been doing for over half a century and a lot of the AI pioneering research, there seems to be kind of a merger there in a sense. Well, actually, let's go there now. Is that am I warm on characterizing that?
Yeah, I think you are. And when I think of world model, I think there's two ways you can think about it. One is a world model, so some aspirational kind of goal to model the world and all the interaction and some of the big visions that are out there. That requires bringing a lot of data, making a lot of assumptions about how the world interacts. Mm-hmm. A different way to look at it, and maybe where we really focus, is modeling your physical world, however you're defining that physical world. So if you're a city or a county, you're modeling the physical world that you operate within. And that's what's important to you. If you're a bank or you're a manufacturer, you're modeling what's important to you. So it's really bespoke. And it's also bringing in your information. So it's not a massively public kind of asset that's being generated, but it gives you the tools to map your physical world and build your world model for your purpose.
So, would love to start somewhere concrete. You mentioned obviously many, your customers include cities, governments, Fortune 100 companies, and on and on. Yeah. Let's say you're a city manager, city planner, city mayor, whatever it is.
Yep.
Can you kind of sketch out a scenario of how they're building a physical model of a city in a way that could actually solve real problems?
Yeah, I think I've got a perfect example. We're actually working with NVIDIA and the city of Raleigh on a pilot. And what they've done is they've taken all of their city infrastructure with respect to transportation. And they've included computer vision modeling from NVIDIA and the ability to capture traffic patterns. And they're doing it to increase cyclist and pedestrian safety proactively. So looking at near misses using computer vision integrated into one geospatial map, and then identifying hotspots of near miss activity or actual collisions. And then how can they change the city's infrastructure, the traffic pattern, the light patterns, whatever physical changes they can make to the city to actually increase safety. And that's a really concrete example of, okay, so we are now mapping our physical city world and bringing the value to the constituents.
I believe other cities, I believe one in California, I can't remember which, have had similar pilots to try and figure out traffic patterns and better understand even school bus routes, right? And say, hey, it's right now the bus routes are kind of inefficient. Can we somehow pump lots of data in there and make it faster bus routes to save time for kids and bus drivers and cut costs and all that kind of stuff? So are you seeing, is there a larger trend there you're seeing in different aspects of city planning and traffic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing about traffic that is true is it's very data intensive, especially when you bring in the real-time data. You mentioned sensors, you mentioned videos, and that's where AI can really help. And also the large compute, the ability to process a lot of information quickly, being able to scan all those videos for anomalies or what's happening isn't a really easy task for an individual person. But when you do that using AI and you're able to use some of the detection models, computer vision, and you're doing that in a mapping context, that now informs the mapping system on how to reroute the buses or create the most effective route. So it's really, it's a problem that's been solved with GIS for years, but now with the ability to use sensor data, larger volumes of data, the problem is getting even better with the application of this kind of new science.
Before we leave the kind of city domain, what are some of the most promising use cases you see for public benefit, let's call it, for cities or states or what have you? What are other promising applications of this?
I mean, traffic is always an easy one. I think demystifying and making the permitting human kind of interaction with zoning is another area where we're seeing a lot of potential. Some of our business partners are developing really slick AI map-based interfaces for saying, what can I build here? I want to build something in my backyard. I don't want to read all of these zoning documents and try to understand and interpret it. I really want to interface with that in a mapping capacity and just tell me what I can build. So that's another really interesting area that's showing a lot of potential.
And can you talk a little more, John, about what is now possible thanks to AI that wasn't possible before? What are the incremental improvements?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you think about AI right now, a lot of the talk, like you said, is about coding. It's about, new tools to do summarization, but the physical world barely comes up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got a blind spot in a lot of cases, right? AI's blind spot is what we kind of like to refer to. It assumes the world is abstract, weightless. So if you think of a pipeline that's running through a river valley is much different than a pipeline that would be running over kind of a rocky, mountainous terrain. The soil is different. The cost to maintain that asset is different. The risk to that asset is different. And that's where the concept of where comes in and really adds additional insight. You can look at historical maintenance records in a spreadsheet and understand we spent so many dollars on this pipeline or across these pipelines over the years. But when you give it the where context, you understand where you're spending the most and what kind of pipeline or assets require the most maintenance. So it gives you a new operating context. It's not just a feature saying it's here. It actually helps you understand how that asset or that pipeline behaves differently than if it was just on a in a normal.
And can you maybe give an example or two that might be more relevant to our listeners who are in the business realm, right? So I think in an abstract sense, it's cool to see how cities can get more efficient, can potentially be safer, save time, save money. Businesses, what are some applications there?
Yeah, one I like to think about is, and this actually happened to me with working with one of my customers. We were working with a manufacturer, and they had hundreds of different rubber suppliers distributed. They had hundreds of different rubber suppliers in a system of record, right? Their ERP system or their enterprise resource planning system. And not until they were actually able to apply spatial AI to it did they understand that they had all these suppliers, and 65% of their suppliers were in the same one region in Southeast Asia. And they were subject to the same physical risks. They were subject to the same geopolitical risks or disruptions. So without having that understanding of where those suppliers were, they didn't really appreciate how, the lack of resilience in their supply chain. And you hear about supply chain and in the application of, or the concern with supply chain now across markets, and you think of rare earth metals and other elements, and critical understanding of where those are coming from is key.
I'm curious about am I right that it's the ArcGIS Pro 3.7? Am I getting that right? Of the, or not?
So ArcGIS Pro, we can just call it ArcGIS Pro.
Okay. Yeah. So, tell us what's now possible with this new version that's better than before.
Yeah. So when you think of ArcGIS, and ArcGIS Pro is as it, the professional kind of grade desktop tooling. But if you think of just ArcGIS as a system, we have various ways you can interact with it online, software as a service, web-based, and then also desktop and our pro tools. But we're shipping now AI in I guess 3 ways across our system. You've got geospatial models and models that we've built forever. When you think of image detection models, the ability to identify a swimming pool from imagery. And we've got that tooling built into our technology. We have assistants. So you want to use the technology, but you want an assistant that kind of will automate some of the regular tasks. It makes it easier to use. It gives you the guidance or the hand holding when you want to use the technology. And then the last way is, and what everyone's talking about now, is agentic AI.
I was just going to go there. Yeah.
So building the capability to expose our technology through MCP protocols and expose Esri ArcGIS services to other agentic kind of engines, or even within Esri also curate kind of the agentic workflow.
So, love to talk agents in two different ways. One is how agents will be, in your mind, used in the future. How will a company use agents that are somehow informed by like the physical world model, right? Or can do things with that, like the where context, if you put it. What are some and it could be time frame your choice. You're out 5 years out. What are some cool possibilities at? Well, let's start there. Where is this going with agents? Yeah.
Well, now, right? So we can start right now. There's agents and our technology supports agentic AI where we can expose spatially aware or agents that understand where, and we can insert that into any number of workflows and expose it to other agents or within Esri, our kind of agent workflows. And those agents can perform kind of regular GIS or spatial functions to analyze information. An example, again, kind of going down to that pipeline angle. If you think about, I've got 140,000 miles of pipeline across the US, enough to go 40 times back and forth. And I'm spending $1 billion a year on maintenance. How do I analyze where I'm spending that money? Analyze it from a where perspective. Where am I spending the most money and why? Yeah, we know we're spending the money.
I'm going to ask a really dumb question here to make sure I understand correctly. Traditionally, I mean, that's a very, very real pragmatic question. I'm just imagining a traditional analyst looking at problems saying, cool, I have these 140,000 miles of pipeline, $1 billion maintenance. Where is it happening? And there will be spreadsheet ways to figure it out, right? You say, okay, I'm going to analyze, I'm making this up, by zip code. Here is where like the biggest spend is, right? And I'll make a little pivot table chart. I'm going to make a bar graph, whatever. And like, cool. I've now isolated the 5 zip codes that have the biggest spends of $1 billion. And then within the zip code, you say, I'm going to look at more micro, by this area. So that's kind of the meat and potatoes way to do it. How do agents doing things that are above and beyond or add different functionality beyond that?
Yeah. So like you said, imagining doing that in a spreadsheet is kind of overwhelming. And with an agent, you could imagine taking 20, 30, 50 years of incident and maintenance reports. You can then bring that incident data and the maintenance records, and you can marry that with soil conditions. So that's where you start to get into the geographic context, right? So those pipes and those maintenance records are all happening somewhere. You have the soil conditions. You have weather data that's happened over the past 20, 50 years. And how has that changed? And now you're starting to understand how all of these factors intersect and play together to affect how you've had to spend money over the past 10, 15 years. That's not possible for an individual analyst to do easily.
So if I'm getting this right, so it's like, it might be that kind of work was technically possible, and you maybe have even very gifted, at this point, to your point, John, it's really more a database senior analyst, right? Someone who's like hooking together, cool, I have my weather database, I have my soil database, I have my pipeline cost database, whatever, right? Yeah. And a very gifted person might spend weeks doing all the SQL, joining tables, databases together. And then they kind of like, after 2 weeks of analysis, they're like, aha, I got it. I figured out the correlation between soil and this. You're saying we can use agents to maybe it's not like a magic, it's not like a new kind of thinking, but it's like the mechanics of getting always that data understood, numbers crunched that can happen like 100x faster. Am I getting my understanding correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And then taking it the next step, the idea of intent engineering, right? And I think that's kind of maybe some of the evolution of agentic, with agents, you can kind of give them very clear instructions on how to solve a problem. With intent engineering, you're actually stepping back and you're providing the goal with precise clarity. So in this case, the goal could be, for your AI system, tell me how to minimize my costs for pipeline maintenance in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And with that clarity of intent, the AI system that understands where can go out and solve the problem now. And it can look at all the dimensions and it can prioritize which dimensions will have the biggest impact on how do you minimize the costs for.
It doesn't, with that baseline, it doesn't take too much imagination to see how many businesses across so many industries could use that kind of deeper analysis, right? And the where might be more common than you would think. I'm again making this up. It might even, depending on how granular your data gets, maybe even a large restaurant might even have, if there's data on the actual foot traffic, or I don't know, but imagining there are ways to help solve problems as far as where beyond where folks typically think so. And that's kind of AI, I think most people aren't really thinking about, right? Most people think about chatbots and questions,
absolutely,
coding maybe, but this is like a kind of like potential true capability improvements that many businesses could have in the future that I don't think the average news story gets at or average person is thinking about, including me often. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I like what you said earlier, Jeff. A lot of this can be done by analysts today, but it will take a long time, or it will prove to be kind of too burdensome or cumbersome to really have the return on investment. Yeah. And that's what's getting a lot of people excited about AI and adding the where dimension to AI is when you get it right, the speed at which you can solve problems is mind-boggling, right? So I think back to remember the bridge collapse in Baltimore a few years ago, the Francis Scott Key, I think it was, bridge. And typically in the past, when an event like that happened, emergency responders, state, local kind of employees would spend weeks, if not months, trying to recreate what happened and what is the situation on the ground.
Yeah.
With AI now, they had an operational model of the bridge within a day using video feeds, using satellite information, and they were able to stitch it all together. And the only reason they could do that was the speed and the application of AI to a geospatial system.
Let's talk risks. I imagine this is all exciting stuff, but I imagine there are a lot of things that could go wrong, as is always the case with AI. And unlike a marketing company that's using AI to try and speed up the time it takes to create marketing campaigns, with maps, there are often human lives at stake, right? If we're talking safety, we're talking bus route, what do you see as the biggest risks, and what steps are you guys taking to minimize these risks?
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head, right? A lot of our real use cases are about protecting assets and protecting people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's billions of people kind of around the world, all through the US. So we take the risk very seriously. We take AI and transparency and trust very seriously. We have no choice. Our customers kind of demand it, and it's part of our DNA. And we do a lot across the board. In the industry, there's a lot of talk of transparency cards. So understanding how do you document how generative AI is being used in your technology stack, and making that accessible and totally transparent to your users. But I think maybe even more important is the fact that AI is only as good as the data, and having good authoritative data to do your analysis and to solve your problems. And that's where we really kind of focus, is making sure that when a user is solving a problem, they're using their internal authoritative data for where their assets are located, where are their people located. And then they're bringing that together with authoritative third-party data, whether it's the National Weather Service or third-party weather companies, and they're bringing those together. So the underlying data has all been verified. And then the merging of those really provides that trust and that de-risking of the decision, because you're using, foundational data that's been vetted and validated.
And I'm guessing, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but I think it's a cliche that has the ring of truth of keeping a human in the loop. I'm guessing that's part of this as well for you. And talk about how you guys, what's your framework and protocol for ensuring a human is embedded in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we do and all the capabilities we provide are available and are, I guess, checked or validated by the human, right? We're not making decisions. We're not making recommendations. We're not doing analysis in a vacuum. It's being done at the behest of an analyst who's running it, who's validating, who's checking it. And then there's also documentation and back to those transparency cards, right? Where are the risks in the application of AI in this process? What do you need to look out for? What assumptions might the model have made that you should validate and check before you trust kind of the answer? And that's really, there's a few different ways to kind of keep the human in the loop, but those are a few of the ways we've done it.
So is there anything that a good, smart human analyst can do with a map right now that AI still cannot? Where do humans still have a bit of an edge?
That is a trick question. I don't know, Jeff, that I can give you an answer. I'm trying to think through one, and
not intended as a gotcha question at all. I'm just curious. I'm curious. Like, is AI able to do what, if a human's looking at maps and imagining the AI model looking at the same map, are there like, kind of brain synapses like, oh, that reminds me of this map of the pipeline reminds me of something from 5th grade that triggers some other, is there some weird like spark of creativity humans have that AI wouldn't have access to that, something like that. I'm making that up.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think the probably one of the limiting factors is, that the AI and the maps can only do what, can only analyze what they've been exposed to.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe that is the limit, right? As humans, we're infinitely able to make connections that don't have any seemingly relevant connection. And unless you tell, in a lot of cases, unless you're telling the AI that is sort of relevant, it may not make that leap.
And I'm guessing it doesn't make sense for you guys to also give it a corpus of French poetry and Greek history, just in case it's relevant to pipeline, right? So.
Just in case, yeah.
Well, one thing I know you guys are not an AI model company. I get that, right? It's a GIS company that's heavily infusing AI to be better and smarter. But what I'm wondering is, like, could you be, in the sense that you have like this such richness of world data right now, right? And there is, as I mentioned up top, as we start to wind down here, there is a lot of excitement in the AI space, including, a lot of true AI icons who are thinking the world model is kind of what we need to get to AGI. It's hard to think of as many organizations that have the richness of data, of literally the maps of the world, and all these different types of soil maps, right? And pipeline maps like you guys have. Are you thinking about, could you guys create a world model? Are you dabbling in that?
So we are not dabbling in a world model. Like I said at the start, right? We build tools that allow people to build physical world models in their context. But with that said, we do build deep learning models that solve very specific problems, whether it's imagery detection or extruding building footprints from satellite imagery or performing a specific demographic analysis. And we make those available to our customers and to the public. And a lot of that is built on top of our data holdings that we either have built or we've gotten through partnerships with others. So is there a future where we continue to enhance and make other models available? Yes. Is there a future where we stitch all that together? I guess I'm not the person to answer that.
Yeah.
But I definitely know that Esri will have a large role in any physical modeling of the world because of the data, because of the technology and the tooling we bring to our users. We're the technology, we're the tool company, and we trust our really smart users to solve really interesting problems and push us to build more and more capabilities. So that's really where we focus. But
love it. Well, if I had I was imagining a betting pool of all the various AI companies to like crack the AGI, whatever, I'd have, despite you saying, nope, we're not on the board at all. I would still have you somewhere in like some of the dark horse toward the bottom, just a fun wild card entrance. I love it.
We're never going to lose our DNA, right? We're a geospatial platform company and we're making our geospatial platform better with AI, and we're exposing more AI capabilities to our users to do all of what you're talking about. But like you said, I don't imagine a future where we're not a big part of the discussion as more and more of AI moves into this and this physical modeling, right? Of problems and solving physical problems. Everything happens somewhere.
Yeah.
All risk is somewhere. All assets are somewhere. I would argue all businesses, even e-commerce, have a where component, right? You're shipping a product to someone or you're storing it somewhere while you're waiting for someone to purchase that. Those are all the where questions that ultimately companies are solving. And they're all increasingly using geospatial capabilities married with AI. Really, I mean, one thing I do want to share, right, is going back to the start of the discussion, Jeff, GIS, right? This term, it can be a little intimidating. People see it as this professional tool and this analytics tool. AI is kind of opening up all the potential because it's easier to use. You can use natural language interface now to drive a spatial query. It's making it much more readily accessible to a financial analyst at a large bank that has a spatial problem. They've just been scared to solve the spatial problem because they didn't want to use or learn a new technology. This is democratizing geospatial problem solving, which is super exciting for us.
John, I think it's a great note to end on. I love that encapsulation of all of this. As someone who finds maps fascinating, I think it's very cool that you guys are mapping the world in all kinds of ways most people can't even really wrap their heads around. And it's very interesting to see where this all goes in the future as AI gets more and more powerful. It helps you guys build better tools. Really enjoyed it, John. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That was wonderful.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to John Lenahan of Esri. And thank you to our show's producer, Jasper Chua, to our show's theme music, Garrett Lang, and thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at AI Curious, please consider subscribing, rating it 5 stars, all that good stuff. Thanks again, and see you next time.